It's day 7 at the 2024 Paris Olympics. Follow us as we bring the latest on Team Taiwan's performance at this year's Games.
Clear skies after Typhoon Gaemi, but recovery is ongoing. And one neighborhood says the damage is man-made. A welcome home from the president. Families are reunited after the largest prisoner swap since the Cold War. Plus, possible new U.S. restrictions are on the horizon for the chip-making industry. What does that mean for global tech? A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Betty Chen. Today marks 1 week since the Summer Olympics officially began, with athletes from around the world converging in Paris to compete. Dozens of Taiwanese hopefuls are there as well, seeking Olympic glory. Leslie Liao is on the ground in Paris to give us an update on Team Taiwan's progress. Leslie, what's in store for the country's athletes today?
Hi, Betty. Well, the biggest event for Team Taiwan today is in men's badminton doubles. Defending gold medalists Wang Qiling and Li Yang will face off against the Danish team in the semifinals today. And actually, that competition is set to start relatively soon. In women's boxing, Lin Yu-ting will go up against Uzbek boxer Satura Turdybakova later this afternoon. Now, Ling has been dogged by controversy in recent days over her gender eligibility, but the International Olympic Committee has cleared her to fight. In archery, Taiwan's mixed team fell to South Korea this morning. South Korean archers have been dominant throughout these games, but Taiwan's team managed to push them into a shoot-off. There will also be other competitions in categories like swimming, golf, and shooting as well.
So Leslie, can you tell us a bit more about how Team Taiwan is doing overall?
Sure, Betty. Team Taiwan has gotten off to a bit of a rough start. Medal hopefuls like judoka Yang Yongwei and badminton player Dai Ziying have been eliminated already. Taiwan has fallen out of contention in about half of the categories that it's competing in. So far, the country has not won any medals officially yet, but it is guaranteed at least 1 bronze. And there are still athletes who are set to compete in categories that Taiwan is particularly good at, like taekwondo and weightlifting. So there is still hope for Taiwan to take a few more medals at these games. The Olympic tally has China at the top with the most gold medals won so far, followed closely behind by the U.S. and France.
Thank you for the update, Leslie. That was Leslie Liao reporting live in Paris. And back here in Taipei, Sandy Chi is in the studio to update us on how Taiwan is doing on the medal table.
Well, it's been a week since the Summer Olympics began, with over 10,000 athletes competing for glory. As for Taiwan, so far the country has not yet bagged any medals. But for sure, one is guaranteed. And that is thanks to boxer Wu Shiyi, who is set to compete in the semi-finals on Saturday in the women's 60-kilogram category. And for sure, she'll win a bronze. And why? That is because in boxing, there's no such thing as a third-place match. So for the losing semi-finalist, they will get a bronze. For Wu, all her fans are very excited about her game on Saturday and hope that she can make it to the finals. To get there, she will have to beat her opponent from China, Yang Wenlu. Meanwhile, also on Saturday, Taiwanese athletes will also be competing in other activities. They include archery, athletics, golf, badminton, shooting, and swimming.
Stay tuned to TaiwanPlus for the latest on Team Taiwan in Paris. The Chinese region of Macao is pressuring Taiwan to accept that it's part of China. It's demanding that staff at Taiwan's representative office there sign a document recognizing Beijing's One China principle. Louise Watt reports from the Foreign Ministry.
Taiwan's foreign ministry is having trouble sending staff to its representative office in the Chinese autonomous region of Macau. An official that was going to be posted there cannot get a visa. That's because they're refusing a demand by the Macau government to recognize Beijing's One China principle. That principle advocates that there is only one China, ruled by Beijing, and Taiwan is a part of it. That's something that the government of Democratic Taiwan, which has never been ruled by the Chinese Communist Party, does not accept.
我方要正告澳门政府尽速摒除不必要的障碍，友善处理澳处人员的派驻问题。
Liang says the office's passport and visa services are being affected by a lack of staff. This isn't the first time it's happened. In 2021, Taipei recalled its Taiwanese staff from their Hong Kong office after the government there made a similar demand. China has been ramping up diplomatic pressure on Taiwan as part of a campaign to one day control it. In a message to Macau, Taipei says imposing political conditions in return for a visa is unreasonable and that such a requirement will harm Macau's international image, as well as exchanges between the territory and Taiwan. Justin Wu and Louise Watt in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Parts of Taiwan are struggling to recover a week after Typhoon Gaemi caused severe flooding. In Changhua, some residents are blaming poor public infrastructure for their losses, and they've taken to the streets to demand the government take action. John Van Tres reports.
There's a standoff underway in this Changhua neighborhood, with police facing over 100 angry residents. Just over a week ago, this area was underwater after intense downpours brought by Typhoon Gaemi overwhelmed the local river. The losses have been immense, and people here say they could have been prevented. This crowd blames public works along the riverbanks for narrowing the river, leaving the sudden rush of water with nowhere to drain. This is an industrial part of Taiwan, and livelihoods are at stake. An initial damage report puts this paper goods factory's losses at over $600,000 US. The owner says his family has been in the neighborhood for years, and they've lived through many typhoons without ever seeing this kind of flooding. He agrees that poorly designed public works are to blame. County officials say they will dismantle this metal sheeting for now and reevaluate flood control measures here, though they dispute the idea that this was what made last week's flooding so bad.
这个部分我会请他说在汛期间先把它移除，这里我们在算整个水流是够的啦，只是说民众有疑虑，我们就去把它做好这样子。
But this and the central government's promise of up to $1,500 US in subsidies for eligible households damaged by flooding have not calmed local anger. People say this was a human-made disaster, not a natural one. Business owners in particular want more subsidies and tax deductions for damage. And the protest in Changhua County is just one glimpse at one community's response to a disaster that's marked the whole nation. From farms to businesses to transport links, Taiwan has a steep bill to pay before it can move on. John Su and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
The founders of a fraudulent online money lending platform have been handed jail sentences. The Taipei District Court found that the two defendants defrauded customers while misappropriating hundreds of millions of dollars. They were each sentenced to more than a decade in prison. IMB, the lending platform they set up in 2015, promised its investors high returns. But behind the scenes, they were faking lending activity and covering interest payments with money from new investors. Another 29 people found to be involved in a scheme were handed sentences of between 1 and 8 years. One of them had previously been an advisor to Taiwan's executive branch. The United States looks set to implement further restrictions on exports of chip-making equipment to China. The move would follow previous measures to limit China's access to key technologies via companies both inside and outside the U.S. Chris Goring explains the growing trade tit-for-tat between China and the U.S.
The U.S. has been restricting the export of key chip technologies to China for the last 2 years, placing penalties on companies that sell to China. This applies not only to the chips themselves, but also to the essential tools needed to make chips, such as lithography systems, which only a few companies in the world produce. The first set of major U.S. restrictions began in October 2022, with a second round coming the following year. Last May, American companies Intel and Qualcomm were barred from selling chips to China's Huawei. China has responded to these moves by restricting export of key raw minerals needed for electronics manufacturing, including gallium, germanium, and eventually graphite. That all leads to these most recently reported rules, the official text of which has not yet been released.
To learn more about the new U.S. rules, Chris also spoke with David Nicholson from the market research firm Futurum Group. He began by asking him how the U.S. can enforce penalties on companies outside its own borders.
What if it's a company outside of the borders of the United States that's using a bunch of American technology to build a final product that they're arguing is, well, it's a Dutch product. It's like, wait a minute, but you used American hardware and software and advanced technology to build it. Yeah, but we built it in the Netherlands. Okay, well, we still don't think you should be allowed to sell that to our adversaries. You are subject to the same export controls that you would be if you were an American company directly trying to sell that technology.
Initial reporting seems to indicate that companies in Japan, South Korea, and the Netherlands might not be included. These are some of the most important countries in the chip-making supply chain. Why would they be left out?
It's not necessarily an exclusion or an exemption per se. It's just acknowledgement that companies within these countries are already essentially in compliance when it comes to the new, more rigorous rules. So I want to believe that's the answer. It's all on the up and up, and it isn't some sort of other backroom political favoritism that's going on. But I believe that that's the case.
Malaysia, Israel, Singapore, and even Taiwan are expected to be affected by this. Does the U.S. run the risk of harming its relations with these countries?
It's a bit of a, walking the balance beam for the U.S. because you're balancing commercial interests of your allies and your domestic companies, while at the same time, there's this looming global security question. I can tell you personally, as an American, it sort of makes me cringe when I hear about my government regulating free trade and the idea that a company in Taiwan is going to have a rough time because, well, wait a minute, shouldn't Taiwan get to decide what it sells to China?
Okay, bottom line here, are these rules going to have their intended effect on China?
Yeah, I think that it's undeniable that it creates friction in the system for China. It slows their ability to get from where they are now to where they want to be. Will it prevent them from ultimately dominating AI globally, whatever that means? Who knows? The U.S. assertion is it's all about security. China will tell you, hey, you know what? You're just really messing with the global economy. You're hurting your partners, and we're going to get there eventually with you or without you.
That was David Nicholson, Chief Research Officer at a Futurum Group. 16 American and European citizens have returned home after they were exchanged for 8 Russians in the largest prisoner swap since the Cold War. Rosie Greninger reports.
Three American citizens and 1 green card holder arrived back on home soil, freed from Russia as part of a multinational prisoner swap. 16 people were released from Russia, and 8 Russians were returned home from prisons abroad. Included in the swap, several suspected spies, political dissidents, and journalists. Flanked by the families of the released Americans, Joe Biden said all 4 were unjustly held by Russia and called the swap a feat of diplomacy.
So for anyone who questions whether allies matter, they do. They matter. And today is a powerful example of why it's vital to have friends in this world.
Those friends, the key allies who helped secure the deal, including Germany, Poland, Turkey, and Norway. The complex prisoner swap, the largest seen since the Cold War, was almost 2 years in the making and would have included detained Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny,
had he not died in prison 6 months ago.
President Biden's top aides have made it clear this swap doesn't change the tense relationship between the US and Russia. Among those released, a high-profile reporter, Evan Gershkovich, detained in 2023 on an espionage charge and sentenced to 16 years in jail. His colleagues at the Wall Street Journal celebrated the news of his return. While in Germany, those freed from Russia were welcomed on the tarmac by German Chancellor Olaf Scholz before undergoing health checks.
Das war sehr bewegend. Viele haben nicht damit gerechnet, dass das jetzt passiert und sind immer noch sehr voll der Gefühle, die damit verbunden sind, nun ganz plötzlich doch in Freiheit sein zu können. Viele haben um ihre Gesundheit und auch um ihr Leben gefürchtet. Das muss sehr klar gesagt werden. Und deshalb ist es auch wichtig, dass wir ihnen diesen Schutz jetzt hier ermöglicht haben.
Germany played a key role in securing the swap, releasing the main figure of the deal, Vadim Krasikov, a Russian sentenced to life in prison for murder. Germany said the state's interest in enforcing his sentence was outweighed by the liberty of innocent people held in Russia. In Moscow, Krasikov and 7 others were welcomed home with flowers by Russian President Vladimir Putin. While facing criticism that this swap could incentivize its adversaries to take more political prisoners, the US said the benefit was greater than the risk. But not all Americans were released. Among those still imprisoned in Russia, an American teacher held on a drug charge and a Russian-American ballerina who made a small donation to a Ukraine aid group.
I'm happy for them. I'm happy for the hostages, for the people, the Americans that has been returned to their families. I'm very happy, and this makes me very hopeful. But at the same time, I'm very heartbroken and sad because Mike Ksenia is not on that list.
The Biden administration says it's actively working to secure their release and that of all citizens around the world wrongfully detained. But as those talks continue behind closed doors, those included in this deal will spend their first days at home basking in their long-awaited freedom. Dolphine Chen and Rosie Greninger for TaiwanPlus.
Stay tuned to TaiwanPlus. After the break, sweltering heat and extreme flooding as China is hit by a barrage of extreme weather.
Enjoy the rich diversity of Taiwan's independent music. Taiwan Calling, every Sunday, 9:30 p.m. on TaiwanPlus.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. At least 3 people are dead in Lahore after record-breaking rainfall. Pakistan's second-largest city has declared a state of emergency as flood waters inundate roads and damage homes, hospitals, and schools. Officials are warning of flash floods and landslides. It's the latest downpours after heavy rains killed nearly 100 people last month. While heavy rainfall is common during monsoon season, scientists link these extreme events to climate change. It's a tale of weather extremes in China as well. Shanghai has issued its first red heat alert of the year, while the rest of the country is facing heavy rains and flooding. Tiffany Wong reports.
Hiding from the heat, people in Shanghai are attempting business as usual under unusually hot conditions. The financial hub issued its first red alert of the year, expecting to see temperatures over 40 degrees Celsius for the next week.
气温最高的数让我感到很惊讶，但是就是还是要 每天想着出门散散步，这也是我的一个习惯。这样，一个是热，一个是会不停的流汗，这天流汗还是比较多的，所以大家还是要多补充点水分。其实我包里也会带水。
It's not just Shanghai baking. Nearby Nanjing and Hangzhou are sweltering too. July was China's hottest month ever recorded as the Earth heats up due to the burning of fossil fuels and rising greenhouse gas emissions. And climate change is also fueling other extreme weather events. Areas in northeastern and central China have also been hit by deadly flooding brought by Tropical Storm Gaemi. Around 20 people have died in landslides caused by the downpours, despite evacuations. State media reported damage to almost 900 homes and over 1,000 road collapses, with disaster relief crews sent to help residents. Heavy rainfall is expected to continue through the monsoon season, bringing more devastation with it.
What we are seeing in recent years is that you have more of these storms hitting Fujian, Zhejiang, and all the way up to Korea and Japan. And so you have more of these storms, and they are quite intense. And as a result of that, the damage for the northern part of China and Korea and Japan have become a lot more significant than before.
With more extreme weather on the way, authorities can only warn their citizens and try to prevent as much damage as possible. Kama Shri and Tiffany Wong for TaiwanPlus.
6 student leaders of Bangladesh's protest movement have been freed after more than a week in custody. They were among the thousands of people arrested in police crackdowns following intense demonstrations against a quota system for public sector jobs. Despite their release and the quotas being largely scrapped, students have vowed to continue protesting brutality by authorities and calling for Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's government to step down. Teachers have also begun protesting in solidarity with their students. Since the protests began in June, more than 200 people have been killed and 7,000 injured. Embassies are emptying across Venezuela as multiple countries question the results of Monday's presidential election. Diplomats from the embassies of Argentina, Chile, Costa Rica, Panama, the Dominican Republic, and Uruguay have been expelled over election-related criticism. And Peru and the U.S. have now recognized opposition candidate Edmundo Gonzalez as the winner. With the opposition releasing tallies, more pressure is on Venezuela's electoral body to provide evidence that incumbent President Nicolas Maduro won the most votes. On Friday in Paris, Taiwanese boxer Lin Yu-ting kicks off her Olympic challenge. TaiwanPlus met her before she traveled to Paris to find out how she prepared.
Taiwanese boxer Lin Yu-ting has been a contender in women's boxing for years. Now 28, the national team athlete has devoted all her time and attention to her Olympic dream. She'll get her shot on Friday when she steps into the ring in Paris with Satora Tordebekova of Uzbekistan in the women's featherweight round of 16.
我就是要好好把握巴黎奥运这场比赛，那为自己、为台湾，然后拿到一个属于我们台湾的奥运金牌。对。
If she does, it'll be a first for Taiwan in the sport and a high point in Lin's 15-year boxing career, which has seen her touch gloves over 60 times. It'll also be a major achievement for her coach.
从国中的时候，他就是我，然后一直到他就读高中啊、大学，这样一路到现在，大概我们合作了有15年的时间。
Coach Zhang has watched Lin grow into the featherweight contender she is today. He's been there through the grueling daily grind of elite-level boxing training and knows what motivates her to keep running, keep sparring, and keep her hands up. That included a trip to China and visiting the venues of the 2008 Olympics in Beijing.
那其实教练当时就指着场馆，然后就告诉我说：“你能够想象你在这个场馆这么多人、几万人、几十万人的场馆，然后在下面，在这么多人的注视下，然后打一场比赛给他们看吗？”
That inspirational challenge worked. Lin has since fought best in the world, including at the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo and at the 2022 Women's Boxing Championships in Istanbul. It was winning gold at the 2023 Asian Games in Hangzhou, China, that presented her with the chance to fight in the Paris Olympics. Yet earlier that same year, she faced the biggest setback of her career when she was stripped of a World Boxing Championships bronze for failing a gender eligibility test. Despite not having competed in the female category for years and being cleared to compete by the International Olympic Committee twice, questions about her gender have followed her ever since. But elite boxers like Lin Yu-ting are nothing if not persistent. It's her commitment to the sport and willingness to make sacrifices that's kept her on her path.
就是如果说再重来一次，让我投胎再重来一次，我可能还是会选拳击。对，因为虽然说拳击在训练的过程，应该说在训练体育项目的过程当中，一定是辛苦的，但它可以带给你的成就跟果实是甜美的。
While Lin Yu-ting prepares for her first bout in Paris, the fight to prove herself has extended outside of the ring. For that reason, nothing will prove sweeter than the taste of Olympic glory. Ryan Wu, Sandy Chi, Bryn Thomas, and Jeremy Olivier for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, let's take a look at Paris Olympics, where the mascot merch is selling like hotcakes at official stores. I'm Betty Chen. Take care and see you next time.